Welcome to the Localpreneur Show, a podcast dedicated to featuring community-based entrepreneurs, the principles they live by, and the success they're having making a difference in the world. Here's your host, Austin Kane.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the Localpreneur Show, where we're highlighting local service businesses on how they're impacting their local communities, and they're engaging with everyone around them, and ultimately changing the lives of the people that work for them or that they work for. Today's episode, we have Jeff Griffin with Griffin Motivation on the show, and very excited to have him here and tell his story. Jeff, let me turn things over to you here for a second and tell everybody who you are, what you do, and a little bit about yourself.
Well, absolutely. Appreciate this opportunity, Austin. And, your listeners can't see me, those who may be watching some of these clips as, future episodes or whatever it may be. They still won't be able to see that I'm in a wheelchair. And I wasn't always in a wheelchair. I was 6'1" and overnight went to 4'7".
Wow.
I was a collegiate athlete who played football. My dream was to play football in college and maybe share a few things of that. But I like to say that I am the best unknown speaker you have never heard of.
That's great. No, that's great. Well, and Jeff, what are some of the things that you speak at, or who's your target audience? Who are you really trying to change the lives of around you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we help everybody who needs help, but we also understand that we can't hit everybody. And so we focus on corporations and colleges, and occasionally we'll do some high school events, but military is my passion as well. I'd love to help the military folk out just for the fact of their warrior mentality and what they've done to serve our country. But so those are the areas in which we focus on and who we help. And those small business owners, I love their tenacity. They've got this similar attitude as these soldiers and these warriors. They're going out there and they're creating, and they're just attacking something that they haven't done before.
Yeah, they're building something from the ground up, and I mean it's almost like their baby. They're just protecting it and going to battle for it every single day. So Jeff, again, glad you're here to kind of talk more about some of the things that you're doing. For those of you that are listening that have never heard one of our episodes before, really what we're all about is like I mentioned earlier, we're here to highlight these businesses and organizations that are impacting their local community, how they're giving back, how they're changing the lives of the people that are around them, and really just share those stories so you can hear the impact that Jeff is making in his organization. So Jeff, let's start with really your organization as a whole and how you're impacting some of the people that are around you, how you're impacting maybe your clients' lives, and also in your local community. What are some of those things you're doing to give back?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. And what's interesting is, a lot of us want to impact the world, and I've been around the world. And what's interesting is no success can compensate failure in the home. So we've got to impact the individual. Right. We've got to impact the one. And a lot of people have these grandiose dreams and ideas. I want to impact 1 billion people. Well, I'm like, let's keep it simple. I want to impact one person who will impact one person. And if I can impact 1,000 people who will impact 1,000 people, that will impact 1 million people.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And so we want to make sure that we keep it simple. And so some of the things that we've done and given back is, as I mentioned, I speak all over the world, and I had an opportunity to go speak in Sweden in 2019 at the 8th World Congress of Mind Training and Excellence in Sport and Life. Lars Erik Unestal is the founder there. He's the president of the psychology department over there. He's been working on his mind training for 40 years. You might have heard of Tony Robbins. Before Tony Robbins, there was Lars Erik Unestal. His program and his pioneering impact that he was having. He partnered up with Charles Garfield here in the United States. Charles Garfield worked with the Apollo project, and he's the one who coined the phrase peak performance. I don't know if you've heard of that, but Lars invited me to come and share some of these these things that I've done locally for individuals. I worked with a young man who was a police officer who wanted to be a Navy SEAL. And so I'm like, let's do this. Let's change that to where, you're serving our country, and worked with him. And he is now currently serving our country as a Navy SEAL.
That's very cool.
Worked with some local coaches. And so it works on all levels. And so these local coaches, one coach inherited a losing team, losing season, won 2 games, I believe, went and shared with him the 3Ds, which I believe are at the foundation of every solution. Went and shared with him and his team. They found themselves in the that season in the playoffs. And then the next year they found themselves in the championship game.
Wow.
And it worked. And, I did it with football coaches, basketball coaches. It works on the, the level of elementary kids. I went and spoke at a local elementary school, and this 6th grader came up to me afterwards, and she's like, Jeff, thank you so much. This is the happiest I have felt my entire life.
Wow, that's awesome.
And so it impacts on the local levels. It impacts on the higher levels, as I mentioned before.
Yeah.
We work with corporations. I went and worked with First Republic Bank in Newport Beach, California. They had 60 relationship managers there. Their desire was to not win a championship, but was to bring in $400 million new dollars. And so I went and shared with them the 3Ds. And after my speech was finished, the VP came up to me and says, Jeff, thank you so much for eliminating all of our excuses. There's no reason why we can't hit the 400 million. And so I called them back up after a year just to see how they did. And her secretary was like, Jeff, I don't know how much Shiva told you that we wanted to get, but we ended up with 530 million.
That's incredible.
And so it's impacting people on the local level, to the national level, to the international level. And going back to Lars Erik Unestal, I was just planning on going to do a workshop there as I'm traveling from Utah to Sweden. One of the speakers bowed out, and so he asked me if I'd keynote one of the sessions, give me 30 minutes. I'm like, absolutely. So the gentleman in front of me took 5 of my minutes. And so here I am trying to get through a lot of this message to help these individuals out. And by the way, the people who are in this audience are Nobel nominees. They're gold medalists, Formula race car drivers, Premier Soccer League coaches, gold medalists, Olympic mind trainers. There's professors with letters in front of their names longer than my name and whatnot. And some local guy from Utah, they get to show up there. And after the second standing ovation, I'm like telling them to sit down. I'm like, hey, listen, I've got stuff to share with you. But at the end of my 25 minutes, as I had my arm around Lars Erik, he looked over to me as the people were standing and clapping and just in awe of what I had just got done sharing. Lars turned to me and he looked at me in my eyes and he's like, Jeff, thank you so much for showing us in 25 minutes what we've been trying to teach these last 40 years.
Wow, that's amazing. I think, just some of the things that you shared, I mean, it's obviously, like you said, you're impacting people on a greater level across the world and not just locally. You mentioned the 3Ds for people who don't know. I mean, elaborate a little bit more on that and kind of what your philosophy is and what you're talking about and what you're teaching everybody that you're impacting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so here's the situation. As I roll out on stage, I address the elephant in the room. As I mentioned before, I'm in a wheelchair. I went from 6'1" to 4'7", and immediately people, can see what is going on with me as I roll out on stage. And so I address the elephant in the room about how good looking I am.
No, hey, that's
completely joking on that one. Those who can't see me, you can imagine what's going on here. But I am in a wheelchair, but I do address the elephant in the room. And the elephant is, I am in a wheelchair. I'm physically paralyzed. I was given a 0% chance, a life sentence from the experts, that I would never walk, stand, or move my legs again. I was given a 0% chance of ever having any kids. Some of the experts told me I'd never get married, not because of my wheelchair, but just because of who I am. But
Oh man,
But my wife and I, we are celebrating 25 years this year, and we
that's
have
amazing.
4 beautiful biological kids. And part of my speech is I get up out of my chair and I stand.
That's
And
incredible.
not just stand, but I walk across the stage, or as I like to say, I waddle with swagger.
That's awesome. But yeah, yeah, defying the odds, doing everything that, someone said you couldn't do. So,
And
uh,
so going back to those 3Ds, I may be physically paralyzed, but I realize that most of us, if not all of us, are paralyzed from the demons of doubt, fear, and complacency. So that's what plagues America. That's what plagues our local community. That's what plagues the world. That's what's plagued the world these last 2 years is this plague of fear and doubt and complacency. And we're paralyzed. We're paralyzed from moving. And so what we do is we do a great job of identifying the problem and the challenge, and we don't spend that much energy on focusing on the solution. And those 3Ds, I believe, are the foundation of every solution, because I believe every problem under the sun has a solution, or it has none. If there be one, hurry and find it. If there be none, never mind it. And so my challenge is just right out there in the open. A lot of us have challenges that can't be seen. A lot of us have challenges and problems that we hide really, really well. There's 3 lies that we tell ourselves all the time. But the 3Ds, I believe, are at the foundation of every solution. And those 3Ds really quickly is desire, dream, and do. Success is a 3-part series. You got to know what you want, you got to finish what you start, and you got to celebrate the process. And the sad reality is majority of us don't know what we want, but most of us know exactly what we don't want. And the problem is if we focus on what we don't want, we continue to get what we focus on. And so where our focus goes, our energy flows. And so we've got to be crystal clear on what we want. And so the 3Ds, they're simple. But as the Navy SEALs told me as I went and trained with them, they're like, Griff, it's simple to be a Navy SEAL. It's just not easy.
yeah.
And so these 3Ds are simple. They're just not easy.
No, I think that's exactly right. I think, you kind of hear something like that. In one way or another, it's, everybody wants, but you get there and you continue wanting. It's like there's just never an end to, I guess filling your cup, if you're not chasing the right thing. And so I can relate to that. So, Jeff, what are, what made you kind of get into the speaking world and really wanting to help other people, whether it's kids or your local community or people across the world? What really kind of drove you to get into this line of work?
Yeah, what's interesting, if you look back or think back to the people who have impacted your lives, there was probably a teacher in that list of individuals who impacted your life, changed your life. I had a teacher that changed my life my senior year in high school. And so I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to give back. And so, I taught for 17 years. I taught for 17 years in the high school and college level and was giving back. But the problem that I saw was I was only impacting about 300 people a year. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I need to get this message out to the world. I need to help not just these 300 individuals, but I need to help the corporations and the colleges that I go and speak with, and the individuals who have access to the hundreds. And so I left that comfortable, consistent paycheck of teaching, and I jumped into speaking full time. And I left in November, and I didn't make a dime until the following May.
Oh, wow.
And so, and talk about, I don't mind being on the streets for myself if I didn't make this work. I have 4 kids and a wife that I don't want to leave on the streets. And so I burned the boats, sort of say, and just had to make it work. So I didn't get my first speech, didn't make my first dime until May of that following year. My desire was to speak 26 times. We ended up speaking 46 times that year, but for pennies and peanuts.
Right.
And so the following year, we spoke 60 times and we tripled our revenue. And things were going great. We were moving the needle for these corporations and these colleges and these individuals that I had spoken about. And so the following year, I'm like, I'm going to reduce my speeches, but triple my revenue, turn my nickels into dimes. And then COVID hit. I didn't know I was going to reduce my speeches that much.
Exactly.
But we had an impact with some companies prior to COVID, and they reached out and like, Griff, help us out. We need a hand up. Everyone needs a hand up, not a handout.
Exactly. Yep.
And so we were able to get through some of those lean times, and I believe I positioned myself as that expert that will help people get out of their chair and get out of the mess that they've experienced these last 2 years. You know, we have been hit hard with some challenges this year, and fear, doubt, and complacency is a huge problem currently. Mental illness is skyrocketing, and I've learned that it's 100% mental.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And yeah, hopefully there's an end, to some of the crazy things that are going on in this world in the near future. And maybe we can start to see the brighter side of some of the potential that we all have to reach and start moving forward to. So, Jeff, I appreciate you sharing everything that you've had to share today. Is anything else before this episode wraps up here that you really wanted to let all the listeners know about you or yourself, or anything about you?
Well, I definitely want the listeners to realize that they are more than they think. We reject, we've got to know what our dreams are and our desires. But what's interesting is there's so many people out there, naysayers, telling us what we can and can't do. I want the listeners to understand and to know that, first of all, they do have the ability to achieve their dreams and desires. And I want the listeners to also know and understand too, that other people base our possibilities on their limitations.
Yeah.
So if you go outward to find help, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to give you opinions instead of advice. And so realize that, most people base other people's possibilities on their limitations. And so we'll never achieve our true power and potential unless we take those steps into the darkness long before we ever see the end. And we've got to trust in ourselves. We got to trust in the ability that we have the answers. We've just got to go inside. You are the solution to impossible. Not anyone else, but you. It's important to find a great coach. It's important to find a mentor. It's important to find somebody else, because that is the answer to the third lie that we tell ourselves. We tell ourselves all the time that we can do this ourselves, kind of like those 2-year-olds. I don't know if you have a 2-year-old or not.
Oh, yep, I do.
I do it myself.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's what I'd leave your listeners with, is that, lie number 3 is you can't do it by yourself. You need some help. And there's people willing to give a hand up, not a handout, but a hand up. And it's important to go find the people who have done it instead of going to the people who have just heard about it or seen it. My favorite comparison analogy is middle schoolers. When they're having love relationship problems, who do they turn to? They turn to their friends who have no clue on what kind of advice to give them. Like, hey, I saw on YouTube that this is what you need to do. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how often do we do that? We turn to people that have no clue on how to do it. But understand that, one, you do have the ability to achieve your dreams and desires, and there's experts out there that know how to get the results that you're looking for.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I appreciate you sharing all that info today. I mean, I think anybody that listens to this episode has a little bit to take away. I think everybody has a lot to still learn. And so I think anybody that listens here, definitely check out Jeff and some of the things that that he does, because I think we can learn a lot from your journey and the things that you share and the things that you teach. Obviously, you're impacting a lot of people, and I know your goal is to impact a lot more. So, Jeff, I appreciate you being on here today and sharing your story, and I wish all the continued success for you guys.
Yeah, and one last thing, if I can, for your listeners, just to share a little bit of love. If you go to griffinmotivation.com, Griffin motivation.com, you can get my products at half price if you put in the coupon code LOVE, just to throw out a little bit of love to your listeners. 50% off if you get 2 books. We eliminate the shipping costs.
Cool.
And so whatever we can do to help your listeners get that jump start and be the catalyst. But remember, you are the solution to impossible.
Absolutely. No, that's great, Jeff. Absolutely. Check Jeff out, grab his books, grab his products, and start applying what Jeff has to share to your life. And I think we can all see a major difference. So thank you again, everybody, for listening to the Localpreneur Show. Jeff, thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Austin.
Thanks again for listening to the Localpreneur Show. For more of our daily content, feel free to check out Josh or Austin's LinkedIn.